So my name is Lisa Floyd. Next year will be my 25th year here at Randolph Union, my 5th year as principal here. I taught 8th grade English for 16 years, so my heart is in the middle school in many, many ways. And that's just a little bit about me. And Kayla.
Yeah, so I'm Kayla Manning French. I am the grade 7 through 9 school counselor. I'm also a Randolph alum, so I've been in the building a lot of years, but next year will be my 3rd year in this role.
Emil Parmalee. I have a rising 6th grader from RES. I also attended this high school a long time ago and went to elementary school at the Red Schoolhouse.
Oh.
So just to really date myself.
Avery McGill. I have a rising 6th grader. I did not go here. Yeah, just in my head.
I'm Erin Berry Fenton. I too have a rising 6th grader, Henry Fenton, and he's very much looking forward to this transition.
It's exciting. You're Lucy. Nice to meet you.
Kelly Brayman, my daughter is Madeline Barak. She'll be coming here next year for 7th grade. I came to the vocational here when it was called vocational, so that also dates myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's exciting. And in the grid, we have,
Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
yep,
Okay. Becca Pressman, I have Jessup Leftcourt, who's a rising 7th grader, and Arlo Leftcourt, who's a rising 9th grader, and I feel like I should know these things because I've done it once before, but I feel like I don't, so that's what I'm doing here.
yeah, happy to have you. Thank you. All right. Should we go over some of our step-up events first, and then you can ask questions? I hope that everybody got the Parent Square newsletter. It's a little tricky because I send the information to the 6th grade principals, and then they get it out, and I know they do a wonderful job. But that is hopefully a one-stop place to look for all the information. But we can go over it too.
Yeah. So we have this Friday is our first really official step-up event. We have during the day from 8 to 11 the step-up day for for the incoming 7th graders. So they'll come over, they'll get tours, get to meet teachers, tie-dyeing some shirts. We keep it really light for the first event. You know, we want them to leave here like excited because again, it is nerve-wracking for parents and students alike. So first event's pretty light-hearted. And then on May 30th, we have the step-up dance, which is 7 to 8:30. And then we'll have the step-up dinner on June 3rd. I believe it's from 5:30 to 7.
Yeah, 5:30 to 6:30 probably, because
Okay.
I think we batted it around. Whatever is published is what's accurate. But because we have so many events, people's questions get answered, and that's really a dinner where the full 7th grade team will be here so parents can meet the team. Steve Foreman, who's been the 7th grade science teacher for the last few years, has retired. And so we'll be adding Michael Gray, who used to be a high school science teacher here. He's decided to return after teaching 6th grade science in Chelsea for a couple years. And so he's excited to be working with 7th graders. So he'll be here as well as the other 7th grade teachers. We also have our celebration of learning next Thursday night. We used to do the step-up dance at the same time so that families could see what students are doing in our building while kids went and had fun together. It just became really challenging for staff to be in their classrooms and talk to the families of their current students and at the same time go visit with the 7th graders. So we've separated those events. But you are all welcome, and it's the Spring Fling at the Tech Center, so they have all their programs open too. It's one of my favorite nights of the school year. So senior projects are on display. Those are our 12th graders' capstones, and then grade teams put out student work that they've collected all year too, so it's exciting. We also, during the summer, Kayla's here one day a week, so if your 7th grader is nervous, you can reach out and they can get a private tour.
And Wednesdays are usually my week, but I'm flexible.
Yeah.
And if you're like, that day won't work for me, we can schedule a time where I can come in. And like, even if you do tour in July and you're a student, and August is like, oh my goodness, I need another one, come back on in. And I start pretty in the beginning of August full-time. I believe the second week is when I'm here all week.
So what questions do you have for us?
Can you give us a good number to reach you at, Kayla?
Yeah, the school number is great. Email is best for me.
Okay.
So if that works for you.
Yeah.
So it's K Manning, MANNING, French, FRENCH, it's long, at orangesouthwest.org. And I check that all the time. And then the number, if you just call the Randolph
That's okay.
school
Yeah,
number.
perfect. Thanks.
Any other questions?
Do you know when the first day of school is?
I believe the first day of school is Wednesday, August, I'll look at my phone.
The 27th.
Yes. We have not, the board hasn't approved the calendar yet. I believe that's going to happen tomorrow night. That's my hope. So, it's a tentative first day of school.
We usually have an ice cream social in August, so that's another event to just get, there'll be seventh graders at that point, excited about being here. And so you can come. Yeah, I believe that the teachers are usually there at least one or
Yep.
two, and then we'll have ice cream and just a place for them all to also kind of be together as Randolph Union students, you know, because we do come from 3 different schools. It's their first event where they're really all one unit together.
And last year we did a sort of bingo to encourage them to talk to each other, and we had prizes for the first 10 students to complete it, so. That was a good way to get them connecting and eating ice cream.
So I recommend that event.
Happy to be back in the building.
And then do you have an idea, maybe I'm jumping the gun, like homerooms, do they have that still in junior high?
Yeah, so,
Do you
you
want
want, okay, I'll start and you can fill in. On the 23rd, that afternoon, we'll meet with 6th grade teachers and we'll put together traveling groups. Traveling groups are sort of the group of kids that they'll travel to all their core classes in. Those sometimes can be changed at the quarter. Just the teachers know once they know the students a little bit better, they'll know what they're doing for units and lessons and things like that coming up, and they'll have conversations about how they need to switch things up. So we make the traveling groups for the first quarter next Friday, and we also make the advisory groups. Advisory is something that stays together for at least 4 years, so we have a fairly intentional process for doing that work. And we mail all of that out later in the summer.
I believe usually around 2 weeks before school starts is when you'll see that come out.
So you'll have to watch your mail to get those things. We have the advisors write a letter, the schedule will come at that time, although it looks a little confusing and students get a little confused until they actually get into the swing of things. The 7th grade classrooms, you'll see when we have the dinner and we do tours, are all in one little section. That's one of the things we kept after COVID. We moved from being in mostly department groups in the hallways to grade level teams. And so the middle school in particular really liked it. So that side of the building, which used to, so it's like the junior high wing, the upstairs is where we have all of the 7th and 8th grade core classes. So they're a little bit separate from the high school. It's not that we think that having them mixed with high schoolers is necessarily a bad thing, but in the beginning weeks of school, sometimes it's really intimidating to be in the hallway with your juniors and seniors and older kids. I think most of our older kids are really helpful and kind, but at the same time, it's nice for the middle schoolers to have their own little area. So there are 4 classrooms upstairs where their core classes will occur, so those transitions literally can be as easy as just crossing the hallway.
In the beginning, on the first day of school, all 7th graders will actually come into here, and that's where we'll talk about schedules, hand them out, and the teachers will be in here to walk them to their first class. I know sometimes even that like first day can have a lot of anxiety, but like, where do I go? There's so many classes. So they shouldn't worry about that because the teachers will be here to support them. A lot of the first day is spent trying to navigate where classes are, and the teachers are really flexible and help the students with that process.
So the documentation that we get the 2 weeks before school, that list what their classes are and their
Yep.
schedule is, okay.
Yep. And we have a survey that we'll send out pretty soon, probably right after Step Up Day. And that gives us a little bit of an idea of your child's interests. So whether they're interested in band or chorus or robotics, so
STEM.
STEM, right.
Yeah, we have some classes that are required for 7th grade, so next year we'll have, health is always a 7th grade requirement, and the class that is alternating with that is a exploratory language, so they'll get a little bit of French and a little bit of Spanish with KVR next year, and it's just kind of an introduction to what the options are, because we do have language as a requirement for high school. But those are the required classes along with PE, and so they'll have one block that they get to choose of what they want to do. So.
And then, what else? So based on the Track My Progress or STAR scores in 6th grade, we'll put together supports for students if there are areas where they struggle. We'll figure that out based on the data that we get from 6th grade. The goal is just to make the transition as seamless as possible, even though it can be really scary. It's a bigger building. It doesn't feel as sort of close-knit, and they go from being big fish in a little pond to, being the little fish again. So we know that, and we keep a good eye on them to see, what they might need.
So as far as the core classes, like your math and English and stuff, is there just like one core class that different groups will go to, or are there different levels of math or what have
There's
you?
one core class that different students will go to, and the teachers differentiate the instruction because data shows that students learn best when they're in the same room together and they learn from each other and from their interactions with one another, particularly at the middle level. And then if there are additional supports needed, we get some of that, depending on where the deficits are, can be plugged in through STEM classes by having an opportunity to really apply the math and science you've learned and go deeper with that knowledge. Or we have a math extension class where there's some basic skill building and some opportunity to work on homework and skills happening in the class at the same time. And then in terms of literacy, we have a 10th grade English teacher who was a special educator before he transitioned to the English classroom, and he offers literature for everyday life at the middle level and the high school level, so backfilling some literacy skills for students who may struggle with reading comprehension or might be struggling to organize their writing or organize their thoughts and get them out onto the written word or out onto the page. So we do offer those supports too. And they take an elective block, so we try to use our data that we get from the tests that we do at various times throughout the year to be as flexible as possible. And if a student makes a lot of progress, we'll let them choose an elective, and that can be really exciting, especially for middle schoolers. But also, if they get into the school year and things get harder and we're noticing they're slipping, then we can pull them into a support.
One thing to know is the literacy class is called Windows and Mirrors, so if any of your students happen to be in that, that's what that is.
Right, they were looking for, I keep forgetting that they were looking for
A metaphor.
a more creative name. Yeah.
And is there a lot of required reading for them?
They-
Because that happens a lot in high school.
Yes. Well, and we've been focused in the last few years on reading whole books at every grade level because a lot of schools moved away from that, and we started to notice the impact on students' ability to pay attention to reading whole works of fiction or nonfiction as they are looking at more short-form media and content, so articles, short videos, things like that. So there's not a ton of silent reading, but there's some. And in the Windows and Mirrors class, they read, I think, 3 novels together, and just check for comprehension and talk about the books. I think they have a list that they choose from, and there's some conversation about which books they choose as a class. So the students haven't complained too much about what they're reading.
Any other questions arise?
Homework. They get lots of homework, right? My daughter hates me.
In 7th grade in particular, I don't think they get very much homework at all. So they really focus on acclimating to middle school, really, focusing when they're here. If something doesn't get finished in class, it might become homework, but it's rare that they get homework, which is sort of a sticking point because I think they get some homework in 6th grade. And so it can feel for some families like they're backsliding a little bit.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, but the focus is really on beginning to feel secure, feel a sense of belonging in middle school, feeling like you're effective in your classes, because there is a lot of emotional impact to changing your elementary school building. Sometimes it's really hard, just with the shifting social dynamics. Just people have been friends for all of elementary school, and then they get to middle school, and their friends start being friends with other people who they haven't gone to school with before. So there's a lot of big feelings associated with the transition to middle school. So.
And teachers do help keep track of okay, if a student is missing stuff and falling behind and we want them to make it up. We have supports like Homework Club we have had, and I believe we'll probably have next year, to be able to help your student after school. And so this year it ran from 2:30 to 4, so that might change, the days might change, but there are supports in place for if homework feels like a lot at home, or if the student is an athlete and has time between practice or games. We have had those supports in place here to help them complete that work.
So homework at the 7th grade level most commonly looks like silent reading, or answering a couple of questions, or doing some basic math problems. So it's not, it shouldn't be anything that parents and students are crying over. Sometimes middle school math can be a challenge, even for really bright people. The way it's taught now is quite different from, at least what I experienced. But I think that kids develop a greater sense of mathematical thinking and numeracy than I probably did. I just memorized a lot and white-knuckled my way through it.
Anything else comes up?
I have a question about, just going back to electives. So if our student just wants to play in the band, will that be sort of the one elective that they would be able to choose?
Yeah, so I can answer that question. So our schedule really kind of tapers up. So in the 7th grade year, they get 1 choice in an elective. And then in 8th grade year, they get 2. In high school, they get 3. Is really how it looks pretty traditionally, unless, there are exceptions to that rule. But yeah, band would be their 1 choice. The only thing is, in the past, we have had chorus and band happen at the same time, so students can take those 2 courses together since they are so intertwined.
Okay.
But usually, yeah, it's the one choice.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because the state mandates physical education for middle schoolers, and then we have the 4 core classes, so the schedule fills up pretty quickly. And it is important, they need to move and get the energy out over the course of the day, so.
So for like active or after-school programs such as STEM and stuff like that, is that something that will start at the beginning of the year, or does that wait until it kind of gets rolling and then jump into those programs?
Yeah, so Maker Monday starts usually by the 2nd or 3rd week of school. It just depends on the person who's hosting the club and when they kick things off. So we try to start things as close to the beginning of the school year as possible.
Awesome.
Middle school athletics doesn't start until we get into the school year a little bit. We do have some after-school theater options. We have a variety of clubs that happen after school too.
And I put out a list at the beginning of each school year. I'll reach out to teachers, like, what clubs are you hosting this year? We have some staples. Are You Rockin' is a band. So let's say your student, Becca, wants to do art or STEM or robotics, but they really want to be a part of a band. We do have Are You Rocking? And this year we have 2 7th graders in it. And so it's a teacher and 7 through 12 co-band. So it's a lot of fun, and students.
A rock band.
Yeah, a rock band, and they get a lot of joy from it, and they perform at Night of the Arts. They performed at pep rallies, so that's also an option. So that one's a staple that we have.
As well as theater, and then dance is a 9 through 12 program. We do have some students who fulfill their PE credit through dance, which is taught after school. Yeah, so 7th grade can be disappointing because sometimes students will think that they have a lot of options and their schedule really opens up, and so it's, Kayla and I get to be the bearer of bad news that you get one pick for what your elective will be. But PE is built in for everybody, so if that's what your pick would be, you already get that for sure.
And can the elective switch throughout the year, or is it locked in?
It's usually they're semester long.
Yeah,
And-
there's a lot of opportunity, and in the first 2 weeks, like, let's say you have a student who's like, I want to try out band. It's not for them, they choose to do something else. They have 2 weeks to make that decision. I usually will say, like, if a student wants to switch and then they try it that day and they come back to me and they're like, no, I want to switch out, I usually say give it 2 days. So that's something I will say, like, just try 2 days and then we'll see. But they do have a little flexibility.
This step-up day, are they gonna be here for lunch, or will they have lunch over at the elementary?
They'll have lunch at their home school.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll have breakfast here though, because we want them to try to get used to the lunch line, because I believe that's a little bit different.
Okay.
So they'll come over right at 8 so they can have breakfast here and then stay through 11.
Yeah, so they'll get to go through a rotation with all their core teachers on Friday. Then there'll be an activity period, which is when they'll do the tie-dyeing. And then after that, back to their schools to debrief. We usually collect a little information about the best piece of the step-up day and what are their apprehensions or fears about middle school, so that we get that information before we send them back. And a handwriting sample.
So if we don't get a chance to see any of their homework or anything like that, how are we gonna know what they're doing? I mean, obviously, we communicate with them and talk with them, but, you know, I use the homework to see what she's up to in school.
Mhm. I think one thing that our middle school teachers rely on a lot is Google Classroom. There isn't a parent level of permission for Google Classroom, so like when my son was a student here, I would say to him, can I look at your Google Classroom with you? and then we could look at it together. And that was really useful because it will flag, like, if something's missing. It will also show you the assignment. And my son was chronically disorganized, so he would be like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And I could look at the rubric right there in the Google Classroom and say, okay, well, here are some clues. So that provided a good opportunity for us to sit together. He didn't always love it, but it was something that we found to be effective. That paired with Power School, so very quickly in the school year you'll get your Power School login, and that will allow you access to log in and look at scores as teachers put them in. The first few weeks of school are disappointing in some ways, right? Because we want teachers to spend time getting to know students, and they do a lot of formative assessments. So if you think that by the second week of school you're going to see grades in the grade book, you might be disappointed. But eventually the grades will start to go in, and you'll be able to track your child's progress that way.
We also have student-led conferences, so it's one of our building blocks to really prepare students for senior project. So students are required to kind of show off their learning. I use like a slideshow format with my advisory, so I make them, they're ninth graders this year, so I make them get up and present all their work to their family and bring in samples of what they're doing, so the parents can really see what is happening in the classroom, what are not only the grades that they're getting, but the work that is being done. So that's another place that is shown.
And that relates to one of our values is we want students to be able to talk about themselves as learners and reflect on what they're good at and what they struggle with. And so the template is that students select pieces of work that they feel proud of, and that pride can come from either having a skill or concept that they struggled with and then they mastered it, or something that they're naturally good at. They select and prepare their presentation for their student-led conference, and then talk about themselves with their family. In grades 8 and 10, they have a portfolio defense, so they're expected to collect their work, and then they have a panel of teachers that they defend their portfolio to before moving on into high school. Or at the end of 10th grade, they typically will split off and either go to RTCC or stay here. So that gives us an opportunity to have another gate at that point. And the rubrics for those portfolio defenses scaffold up directly to our senior project defense, which is their final presentation. So those of you who graduated from Randolph Union probably remember senior project. Still here. But I think we do a better job than we used to of really building in steps so that students are working on the skills they need for that capstone as they grow. And the work that they do on their portfolios is really important, and we see that right now. We've got a couple of open positions, and so we always put students on hiring committees. And people will often say how impressed they are about our students' ability to talk about the school and talk about themselves and ask questions and communicate really directly with adults. So that speaks to our ends related to communication, our big vision statement. I feel like I'm talking a lot. Okay.
Is there anything else that's coming up for anyone?
As the only rising 7th grader, do you have any questions?
No.
No?
No pressure,
Okay.
Henry.
It's an impressive hat, I like that.
Yeah.
Are you a lacrosse player?
Hmm?
Is that lacrosse stick?
Oh, yeah.
Nice. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, and you can email either of us at any time if there's something that comes to you after our conversation. We try to stay as responsive as possible, so. Right, you don't have to stay late if you don't have more questions, but.
Do you have any more questions at all, Becca?
I don't think so, and if they come up, I will reach out.
Awesome, thanks so much.
Thank you. Oh, actually, quick question for you while you're here, unrelated to 7th grade. Are you still taking pictures for 8th grade graduation?
Yes, please.
Okay, I will get my act together and send you some because it's on my checklist. And I just haven't done it yet, but I will send you
Great,
some.
thank you. That'll be great.
All right. Thanks so much.
Have a good rest of your day.